My name's Maya Bankovic. I've been working in the film industry since 2007. I did the film school path. I met a lot of the people I still work with to this day while I was at school. I went to York University. I did a 4-year BFA program there. And I went there with the intention of becoming a cinematographer. So that's what I set out to do the second I left. I've been trying to listen to what directors tell me I bring to the table and take that feedback and sort of absorb it. Even though I feel like an intensely impatient person, I've been told I'm very patient, both on set or like with subjects or actors, and with crew too, because that's, as you know, it's part of the job. We have to be listening to the needs and both the creative and the technical needs of a lot of different people. I care really deeply about the subject matter behind the projects I choose to shoot. And with that comes, a sensitivity and a compassion for your subjects, if it's a documentary or for your actors, and certainly for the director and what they feel like their mission is with the project they're trying to put out into the world. I've had to learn and figure things out on the job more than maybe someone who came up through lighting or who observed more through camera assisting and that type of thing. But I think as a result, what I've learned instead is and what I really value is communication and interpretation of a director's intentions and things like that you can really only learn on the job as a cinematographer. So there's been pros and cons to going about it the way I have. A lot of the time when I look back on, especially when I was younger, I think I actually got in my own way quite a lot. Maybe I kept things a little smaller than they needed to be, or I didn't ask for as many favors, or I didn't try to upgrade the package I was working with, and just kind of kept things a little too small, actually. We're socialized to just be thankful and grateful for any kind of scraps we're thrown, and I think that's a big part of it. There's also a transactional sort of element to asking for favors. To me, at least, I like providing jobs. I like providing money in exchange for gear and stuff like that, but I look around and I see a lot of my male colleagues, they don't really have problems swapping stuff or trading equipment or coming out for free for each other. And I've started to realize well, why wouldn't I ask for help here and there? And it's a community after all, right? So I did really feel like I had to do everything on my own, in the beginning, before I learned how to just reach out. I listen to a lot of women talk about this. I try to connect with women who are emerging in the field, and the thing I hear again and again is an assumption, I think, that it'll be harder than it needs to be. I'm kind of two minds with the women in film movement and the hashtags and everything, because while it does highlight our presence here, which is important, and the visibility is really important, I think it also introduces an emphasis on the barriers of gender alone. There are plenty of barriers and difficulties with this job that are just difficult for all human beings. Learning how to communicate properly, clearly, respectfully, delegating. That's something that a lot of women aren't raised to do. They're skills that aren't really bred into us the same way they are maybe for our male counterparts. So those things are hard enough, and they're hard enough for plenty of men as well. I hate to think that a movement that can be so positive can have this reverse effect of overemphasizing the lack, because that's sort of then where our heads go. Just things that are tricky about the job. It's not so much about, are you strong enough to carry cameras around anymore? Now it's about but can she run a crew? That's the sort of question I was getting a lot in interviews with producers, who are a little more old school. It's sure, we like her reel, but can she run a crew? Can she be a boss? And that's something that was coming up a lot until I had to just say, yes, I can. I don't know what their expectations of what a boss is, but I'll shoot the movie and I'll show them what I think a boss looks like, and then sort of go from there until you build enough credits that people don't ask that question anymore. But that was something that came up a lot in the beginning, for sure. And I think it's something that people are worried about, and women are worried about with themselves too. Is my gaffer going to think my ideas are bad or something like that? Or, is the director going to trust me enough? Or I remember also a documentary producer suggesting to me that I should put pictures of myself on the internet, like handheld camera operating, because the assumption will be made that and especially because I'm like small in stature, like that maybe that's like going to be a pitfall of mine, that I can't do that, and so I should make sure people know that I can and that I do. It's the kind of stuff you don't even expect people are thinking about. One of the things I wish had been sort of like, highlighted more was like just the role that gripping would play in my life. It's now become like my favorite part about lighting, and most of my conversations are like grip heavy on set, especially because I work on location mostly, even in fiction. So it's more about like controlling and supplementing what the natural world is giving us, and then just like the multitude of like beautiful fabrics and methods there, and the physics behind it, I think is really great. So I think spending more time gripping would have been fun and educational. Of course, when you think of cinematography, you think about the camera. So a lot of people go that direction. And I definitely have been a very camera-centric DP, but I would have loved to learn a little more about the gripping side of things a little earlier, because that's really where my world and my sort of taste buds went later, the second I had the freedom to play around more with it. On a professional, like sort of career level though, is to just like create your own opportunities. Especially now with technology being as inexpensive and accessible as it is, it's like, I wish I could have heard that a little more, even just to know I was on the right track with that, to just make your own projects, make your own work. My reel still has tons of shots in it that were made, like maybe 5 years ago with just like a friend on a small music video or something that we initiated ourselves. And often they were the projects we were proudest of. I've been told I'm very diplomatic. I think that's like an important thing, to be, as a manager of several departments, plus the bridge between the director and then often, and producers too, and showrunners if you're in television. You have to be able to filter through a lot of ideas and a lot of needs, creative and otherwise, logistical as well. And I think just patience. I keep talking about patience, but it's really true. You have to be willing to wait for the right moment. You have to be willing to wait for the right light, and also know when to sort of fight for those things too, against the clock and other things that are important to other people in the process, like an assistant director or something, or to explain to them why this is important for the visual, to wait. Or this is something I've learned from directors too in the documentary realm, is to just wait for a moment, to wait for an actor to get there. There's a lot of waiting, and it's important, I think. I think a lot of my aha moments are more like driven by like the content of what I've shot, like just listening in carefully to an interview and learning from the people in front of the camera about like their outlook or their philosophies on life. And the further along I get, it's like sort of like the camera's increasingly becoming just more and more of a ticket to just like a broader education, about what it means to be like a human, And I'm grateful that I spent all those years kind of obsessing over the technology, because now when that stuff becomes second nature, you're really just now in interesting rooms, and you're in interesting conversations, and you're listening to the process and the sort of the headspace of people who are often quite fascinating. It's funny, there's like professional highlights, like getting a film screening at Sundance was a big one for me. That was like 5 years ago now, in 2014. But it was special also because of the project that it was. I had always wanted to screen at Sundance, even as like a teenager. But I was glad that it was with that particular project. It was a documentary that I did with the National Film Board, and it was shot with friends, and it was about subject matter that was dear to us, because it was about a gender nonconforming musician who had like just like a beautiful outlook on the politics around gender, but also just life itself. And so it was special to bring that project to Sundance. I think just the realization that this career now has a life of its own, and that I can just see where it takes me a bit and just shape it a little bit, has been really satisfying, that I can reduce the like hustle a little, and now just concentrate on the things that I'm hoping will come my way in terms of like content and interesting people with new ways of seeing the world that can kind of show me their version of it, and I can try my best to do that with the camera, you know. It's always nice when a director comes along that has like a new way of using the camera and they aren't coming to me because of what I've already done with the camera. So that's starting to happen now, and I think that's how you really grow and expand. When I first graduated film school in 2007, I was the only woman in my class that was studying cinematography. But I didn't, and I knew that there were not going to be very many of us out there. But I didn't quite realize that this was sort of like a start of like a next movement towards more inclusion and gender parity and things like that. Like I didn't quite see that coming. I just knew that I was sort of an anomaly and I just stuck out a little bit. And I also knew that I didn't really feel taken seriously in that, in school, and I kind of expected that to carry over. I guess there was an anxiety there that I had to keep busy and stay present and visible and around. And now I think that there is this push towards hiring women, not just to throw us a bone, but because people are valuing whatever they perceive our sensibilities to be, like valuing those qualities creatively, and also almost like environmentally. Like people like to think that women run a show differently, maybe more sensitively, maybe crews are appreciating it more. The communication style is maybe a little more humane. There's less aggression, less of a competitive atmosphere. These are all things that I hear from mostly men who have been in the business for a long time. I would love to see more women, more people of color, just normalized, their presence normalized on film sets. Film sets are still very male and very white, you know. I think that has to come from the writing level and the producing level too. I think the reason I have been able to sort of flourish in this particular time in history is because more women are writing, and I think it comes from there, you know. So people increasingly, they want to connect with their collaborators. They want their crew and their key creatives to feel the material and not just execute it nicely, but also contribute their own life experience. So I think the more that we have women and people of color, all kinds of diverse writers getting their projects made, we'll start to see more of a diversity on set as well. And hopefully at the union level as well too, because I see it a lot more in the independent world. You know, all those like uncounted names who aren't on any guild lists or any union lists, but they're out there and they're mostly in the independent world. I think that's largely a reflection of the budgets. But the more that we can sort of include these voices and give them the money to work with, because the audiences are hungry for that stuff too, that's sort of the change I'm hoping we'll start to see more. There's like a part of my brain that loves the really kind of refined and well-designed and well-crafted composition and camera movement and the precision behind all that. And then the other half, which maybe comes from documentary, but I still really like shooting fiction this way too, is like where you just sort of feel something out and you keep it a little bit looser, and maybe those are handheld. So I'm still always trying to find the line there with like finding like a feature-length fiction project that can kind of straddle all of that. I try to implement those things whenever I do shoot fiction, but sometimes something calls for one thing or the other. But yeah, mostly I'm just like looking more for content that I still feel is like personal to me. I think as cinematographers, we're not the ones writing and we're not the ones speaking at the Q&As about what this project meant to us all the time. We're looked to more for like the technical answers or the more aesthetic answers. But I really feel like the choices we make in terms of what we shoot, that kind of becomes the art. You know, the body of work becomes the statement on what you're hoping to leave behind and what you're hoping to contribute to the world. That's what you're hoping to contribute. So I take those choices really seriously. So my hopes in terms of what project comes next, they're often like content driven. You know, like, so in this moment I'm like really interested in like projects about about mental health and family and quieter drama type projects, you know, like that. Those are sort of like where my heart tend to go as like as a viewer. So those are the ones that I'm just hoping kind of come down the pipe. Well, in Canada, I really love Charles Officer's work. He works in both fiction and documentary, and he's a friend of mine, and we've talked about doing some more shooting together. But I love that. I love documentary and fiction filmmakers that can straddle those worlds and infuse their style with both. And I would love to see what my friend Chelsea McMullen does with fiction. She's someone who's done a lot of documentary work that's really beautiful. I mean, internationally, there's like Kelly Reichardt, whose work is so gorgeous and understated, but so powerful, and she works in 16mm a lot. I really love her films. There have been times in my life where I thought I would just, you know, pursue this career and not go through the motions of, you know, joining IATSE or becoming a full member of the CSC, and I would just carry on and do it sort of like rock and roll style on the fringes, you know? And I think a lot of women have done that and been successful at it. But I do think we're living in a time where it's important to reach out and join established communities like this and to make our presence more known. So that's really been shaping my professional choices lately in terms of like affiliations, doing projects where there's visibility for us, you know, giving back to a community that maybe I felt sort of slighted by in the past, but knowing that we need to sort of help create some positivity and optimism for people coming up behind us.